for joining us.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Thank you for just... Never mind.
We're a little early today.
Yes, we are.
Why don't you tell the people out in TV land why we're early today?
Oh, we're early today because this is the big weekend where Brett's drama teams are putting on the shows. Friday night, Sabbath already this morning, and then tonight will be the last show. So if Brett and Aspen are going to arrive in time, they need to eat dinner on time, which means they have to eat at 5, which would be the usual time we would try to do this.
So yeah, it's been a big weekend, and so it's been interesting having them. I'm not sure I like I did not imagine, like, when we were changing sets, because we do 2 shows, I thought everyone would leave and we'd reset the stage and then they'd come back, but nobody leaves. They just sit there.
I think they all like to watch it happen, that magical transformation from one set to the next
but
one.
It's not so magical. It's just
so...
so...
All the things are on wheels and stuff like that, and they roll in the new walls. And
I wanted them to leave, and then magic, oh, it's a new set.
But... Oh, yeah, but I think they probably think it's more magical to watch it.
Yeah. Well, anyway. So, yeah, but actually we were... talking, I don't know, how many days ago we were talking and we had this conversation?
Oh, it was probably more towards the beginning of the week.
Yeah, top of the week.
Because you know what? Actually, I started thinking about this, I think, on Sunday morning.
Did you?
Yeah.
And it was just, they were just driving to Walmart or something. You started telling me about it.
Oh, yeah, probably.
And it was just, I thought, wow, that's a really good topic. It was a really good idea. And we just talked about it as we were driving along. And so we're going to talk about it now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what I'd gotten to thinking about was, okay, once again, we're still on the same text, because that's the text that I'm focused on, is 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9. My grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. And the rest of it is, I will rather boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Then verse 10 after that says, therefore I am well content with weaknesses, with insults, with distresses, with persecutions, with difficulties, for Christ's sake, for when I am weak, then I am strong. And we can't be sure, but I got to thinking about it, I thought, this kind of sounds like he had this epiphany, that all of a sudden, because he's asking God to take away this affliction that he has of some sort that doesn't get named, but he's asked 3 times and God hasn't taken it away, and yet in the meantime God says, my grace is sufficient for you because my strength is made perfect in weakness. And so while he had probably expected God to take that away for him, and no doubt God had maybe done things like that before, this time he said, no, this time my grace is sufficient for you. And he was familiar with God's grace because he no doubt remembered back when he had been a Pharisee and he was out there, persecuting the Christians and didn't believe that Jesus was the Son of God and stuff like that. And then one day, there he is on his way to Damascus, and there in the middle of the road, God shows up with his grace. And he knows how powerful that grace is because it entirely changed his life. And so he probably thought back to that, and he thought, wow, maybe he didn't like it so well at first, but wow, to live out God's grace and God's strength in his weaknesses. And he's like, wow, do that, and with insults and distresses and persecutions and with difficulties. Wow, this is so great. Because see, he was living out God's truth as he knew it at that moment. And God's fine with that. But when we live out the truth that God has given us, at some point in time, he will show us more truth that he wants us to live out so that we can be drawn into a closer relationship with God. And that's all that God wants is just a really close relationship with us.
Yeah, he had to, I think, sometimes we get, I think, people, I pray and I ask and God doesn't answer, doesn't take it away, and and Paul had the same experience. He had that same feelings that we have when we feel like God's not answering or God's not giving what, but Paul did too,
Yeah. And then God says, you know what? I'm not going to take it away, but my grace is sufficient for you.
Yeah.
And my strength is made perfect in all of your weaknesses, no matter what they are.
And Paul probably, when the life of a Pharisee and is not an easy life in many ways. And back then it was, a lot of following these rules and laws and righteousness by, works and everything. And this, I bet, was a huge relief also. And that, wait a minute, none of that means anything. And I don't have to be perfect. In fact, I can't be perfect. And no matter what Pharisees told themselves, I'm sure they all knew they weren't perfect. And that would have been a really hard thing to, carry with you. Think, I have to be this, and I know I'm not. And other people think I am, but I know I'm not. And then here Paul has this freedom. Like, no, it's these weaknesses of ours, these faults, these things. That's when God really shines through. I'm not the one that's supposed to do it. He's done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, and so sometimes we think sometimes that these people in the Bible, like Paul and Jesus' disciples and all these other great prophets and all this kind of stuff, that they got it all together. And certainly they knew all truth and they're living out all truth and such like that. And yet they were just living out everyday lives like we are and learning new things on their journey on the path of righteousness that God had them on.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, they had the same experience as us.
Yeah, much sort of like Peter with his with the basket of food or whatever.
Yeah, that would have been another one where you think, Paul's a great. So well, Peter too. He would have been of the original 12. Peter would have been seen as like the leader and the great. And he's going along, and even after all this time with Jesus and the resurrection and preaching and working with Paul and everything, and yet Peter still had, great prejudice against, Gentiles or those, who weren't Jews. And even though he knew there really was, no great distinction anymore, he knew, Jesus loved the Gentiles, and Jesus made that point. I mean, it wasn't absolutely new information to him. And yet.
But so many times we have the information, but somehow or other it just doesn't click into actions.
Yeah. And he, God was about to put him into action. He was going to send the Roman centurion, was it Cornelius, I think, to him. And probably Peter wouldn't have gone with him because it was a Gentile, it was a Roman. No, I'm not going to go to a Roman. And yet, God gave him the vision of the, animals, unclean animals being lowered down. And rise up, Peter, kill and eat. No, it's unclean. Don't call unclean what I've called clean, And even then, Peter had to learn that. And his great weakness there was prejudice. And he had to, let that go.
And God's grace at work in his life got him there.
And Cornelius and his whole household, and it had, were convinced and converted, and they went on to influence other Romans and Gentiles. I mean, it was, something that God took a great weakness in Peter and used it for, to make a big impact.
Yeah, and so the first, Brett's putting on 2 mini plays this morning, and so the first one he wrote 30 years ago by now. I know. It's hard to say that. I don't want to say it in front of Brett, but that's kind of the numbers.
Ago. It really is, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So about 10 years ago, he decided to put the play on again.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I hadn't done it because I never really liked it. It was okay, and I thought it was a great idea. But I wanted to do it again, but I didn't like the ending. I had never liked the ending because I hate cliche, and it was so cliche.
Yeah, but, he was young when he first wrote it. So,
yeah, I mean, it was early on when I started ACT, and we needed I even think it was probably only the second year of ACT, and we needed just a little bit longer of a skit to end the program with. And I think at the initial, I liked the idea, a courtroom drama, but yeah, the ending was so cliche. I never did like it, and that's what I told him. I said, I want to do this, but I don't like the ending.
Yeah, he really wanted to do that short little play, but and then so we did. We sat down and we talked about it several times, at least 3 times, I think. And we spent at least an hour each time kicking around ideas. And honestly, like, we have a lot of fun doing that. But by the time you get done with 2 or 3 times of an hour each, and you come up with nothing, it has no longer been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, not at all. So Brett kind of gave it a break for a bit, and it was several weeks later probably. School had already started, and he had picked his drama team, and he was going to be passing out the scripts. And he said, you know what, Miranda? He said, we really need to find an alternate ending, and so let's talk about this another time. And I was thinking, oh, no, I don't want to. It hasn't been successful yet. What makes him think it's going to change now? But in the meantime, what had happened was sometime between the last time we talked about it and that time, I woke up one morning, and just so you know, I am a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed morning person, and as soon as my eyes pop open, I am awake and thinking and ready to go. Well, that one morning, I opened my eyes, and my brain came alive, and there was no pause of non-thinking or anything like that. I didn't think anything else. All of a sudden, as soon as I was awake, I thought, ask the pomegranate God, and then I stopped myself. I was like, Miranda, you are truly the weirdest person I've ever known. Who wakes up thinking, ask the pomegranate God, ask the pomegranate? And when I got to thinking about it, I thought, well, ask the pomegranate God. Why did I stop that thought? That could have been pretty interesting. Where was that going? And I thought, well, okay, so what would you ask the pomegranate God for? Well, you would ask him for pomegranates, right? Because that's what he has. And I thought, well, that's all nice and everything. What kind of spiritual analogy can I draw from that? I thought, well, you know, so the pomegranate God would only have pomegranates to give out, right? And yet God can give us anything that we ask for if that's the best for us. And so I thought, well, that's a nice thought. But yes, does Aspen want to say something?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does the pomegranate God give out pomegranates year round?
Yes.
Yes, his pomegranates don't have a season. They're all season
Yes.
pomegranates.
Yes.
Ah.
Yeah.
I would like some.
Get in line.
Yeah, get in line,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, well, that's a decent analogy, you know. But it still bugged me for several days after that. It kept crossing my mind. I was thinking, what else can work there? And then I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to look up the biblical symbolism of pomegranates. And turns out that there's several things it's symbolic of, but the main one is righteousness. So I thought, well, you know, we can all use more of the righteousness of God. And so it didn't bother me anymore after that. It's just kind of disappeared, and off I went on my merry way until, of course, Brett said, hey, let's talk about this again. And so I think he kicked us off with starting to talk about the end of the play, because that's the part that he wanted changed, of course. And he got through that, and then I was like, oh, wait. Like, can you go back to the beginning? I said, how does this thing start again? He's like, well, there's this guy, and he steals a piece of fruit from the Universal Fruit Factory. And I thought, oh, wait, stop right there. I thought maybe this piece of fruit can symbolize something or other. I don't know. So I said, what kind of fruit did you choose? He's like, oh, it's a pomegranate. And of course, then, like, instantaneously, the light goes on for me. And I know the ending, but I didn't say anything. I was like, oh. I said, well, why did you choose a pomegranate? And he said, well, because I just liked how it sounded. It wasn't an apple or orange or banana. It was a pomegranate. It was something different. I said, okay. I said, well, do you know what pomegranates symbolize in the Bible? And he said, no. So I told him that they symbolize righteousness. And then, of course, the light absolutely went on for him as well. And we didn't have to talk about it anymore. Off he went to rewrite the end of the play. And it's just amazing to me how God chooses to show up. Surely he knew 30 years ago by now,
Mhm.
how that was all going to play out.
Mhm.
We didn't. Brett was living out the truth, if you will, with what he knew at that point in time and had written. And when he wanted something different, God was there and provided it for him. And I think the audiences have benefited from that.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's you just never know when God is going to show up, and He already has the plan.
Mhm. Yeah, and I say this all the time. That was probably my least favorite script I've ever written, and now it's one of my most favorite.
Mhm.
It's kind of had that transformation, and that's where it started, and it just got me going. That was like great symbolism, and that just kind of really got. Oh, let's do more symbols. Let's put symbols in, and it just grew from there. So yeah, it was really kind of cool, and that's kind of an illustration of what you're talking about, like the weakness there.
Yeah.
I couldn't come out there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, on our own, boy, did we try.
Yeah.
We gave it a valiant effort, and we're usually really pretty good at
Yeah.
that. Like, we never have an unsuccessful time
Yeah.
of kicking ideas around for an hour and not coming up with
something,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was a little like, well, this is unusual,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it was.
it just had to get the message from the pomegranate out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we probably should get going since last play is coming up.
It's true. Quarter till.
But anyway, thanks for joining us. And if you want to see the play, I think we are live streaming it tonight. I think they are. But we're going to record it and post it anyway. So, yeah. Thanks for joining us. Next week, we'll be maybe out and about somewhere.
And maybe we will. We keep saying that. And today, actually, I was like, yeah, let's go over and do this on the set. And people can see the set that Brett put together. But, once Brett woke up from his nap and such, I was like, sorry, Brett, I'm too lazy to go over there. So here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are at the desk.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll be around somewhere. So thanks for joining us, and have a great rest of Sabbath.